Hey, y'all, Zach McDonald, your real estate agent with Real Property Associates, and this is my Seattle Real Estate Market Watch for February 13th, 2024. Well, we've had some interesting news here as we start off this week, and we saw inflation numbers were higher than expected. And something that we've talked about here over the past few months is that rates are expected to start coming down, Fed funds rate, and that mortgage rates are expected to start doing the same as well. But what we saw here is that rates have actually jumped, and that is a result of the negative inflation news, as the mortgage rates are more impacted by inflation than the Fed rate itself. And the Fed rate is a response to inflation as well. So as we're looking at the mortgage rates here today, Mortgage News Daily's website and their daily survey is saying that we're looking at 7.08% rates here for February 13th on average across the board. Last week, we were at 6.96%. And at the beginning of the year, January 2nd, the survey had a 6.72% rate. So in 2024 so far, we've trended up a little bit on the rates. Now we're still well below the upper sevens, low eights that we were seeing in 2023. But at the same time, we haven't started to see rates coming down yet. And I think the response here on the mortgage rates, again, tied to the bond market, is that the inflation numbers were higher than expected. And so because of that, the mortgage rates are now responding to that, thinking maybe that the rates aren't going to be coming down as soon, that we aren't going to see the Fed start dropping the Fed funds rate as quickly as maybe we were hoping. Maybe we're going to be seeing that later in the year, which is something that we talked about as well, that we're probably going to see those cuts later in the year. We might see them earlier, and I think that positive sentiment is maybe waning a little bit in the market. We saw a pullback in the stock market as well. I think a lot of people were expectant to see that the inflation numbers were continuing to get better, but that's not what we saw. So again, each month we're getting new data, so we'll see what the next report shows. But for now, there's a little bit of a pause on some of the positive sentiment on rates coming down. Now let's talk about the Seattle market here over the past week. And if we look at the new listings, we did see an uptick in new listings week over week. So we saw 368 new listings last week in King and Snohomish County, single family listings. That's up from 344 the previous week. So just again, a slight uptick. Last year in the same week, we saw 355 new listings. So pretty similar. We're not seeing a bunch of new listings. We're seeing so far fairly similar if we were to look back over the other updates this year. Inventory is just less. We're seeing less new listings. Now we saw some properties come back on the market, not very many. We saw 45 back on the market. Last year, we had 73 come back on the market this week in the year, and a lot of those would have been listings maybe that expired and weren't selling in 2022 when the prices were coming down and they put the house back on the market in February. We did see things pick up February, March, April of 2023. And some of those houses would have sold during that period. Now, if we look at list price reductions, we had 78 list price reductions. Last week, we had 104. So we saw that number down. And that was even farther down from the 172 list price reductions last year in the same week. And again, we've been seeing houses selling. If you're following along with the monthly market updates, that's where we're looking back at the data from the previous month. We've been talking about how houses are selling quicker than they were at the same time last year, and they're also selling for closer to asking price. We're just seeing fewer expired listings in 2024 so far than we did in 2023. Now, contingent purchases, we saw 13 last week, up from 12 the prior week. Last year, we only had 5 in this week. So contingent sales are still happening. Contingent sales are homes where the buyer is purchasing with a contingency on selling a different house. So essentially, this transaction won't go through unless they sell their other house. Now, in a super competitive market, there are very few, if none, that are happening. So we're seeing that there's still opportunities for those contingent purchases. The signal that the market is white hot is that those are gone, or there are one or two in a given week in King and Snohomish County. Now, if you look at expired listings, only 11 this past week, down from 35 the prior week. We don't see a lot of expired listings in the middle of the month, but again, I just want to share that stat with you as we do every week. Pending listings. This is the fun one, right? So we're looking at the new listings, I would say, and then the price reductions. We're seeing the pending listings, 661 last week, 683 the week prior. And last year, we saw 743 pending listings. So not quite as much coming off the market, but last year we also had way more supply. So where we find ourselves right now is in this low inventory environment that we weren't quite in at the same time last year. So there just are fewer houses to sell. It's not that there's less buyer activity, because that has been picking up, but we are seeing less total volume of transactions. And that's just because there aren't as many houses out there. The competition, though, is picking up for the listings that are out there. The sold listings, 355. That is slightly down from last week from 358. Last year, 406. Again, same comment there. We just had more houses available on the market. And as things were starting to pick up, rates actually dipped a tiny bit last year heading into the spring. And that did help fuel things a little bit. Some of the competition, some of the price bounce for 2023. And canceled listings, again, we're kind of mid-month, but 44 canceled listings versus the 46 last week. Now, overall, looking at the market, I published my most recent market update for the month. I've got the King County update, the Snohomish County update, and the Seattle updates. And in all of those cases, we were seeing that the market is starting to get better. There's more activity in the market. The prices are trending upwards. We're seeing that homes are selling quicker than they were at the same time last year. We're also seeing that houses are starting to sell for closer to, if not over, asking price as we head towards the spring. So my thoughts as we're entering into a spring market here in the Seattle area in the next month or so, number one, we're going to start to see more listings coming on the market. I think we're going to see some more inventory than we did last year, but so far we're trending about the same. But I think we are going to see some more. Now, as I'm hearing some of this inflationary data, it's causing me to think that if we're seeing these drops later, that's when we're going to see rates, mortgage rates, they'll start to drop just before the expected cuts. But I think if we see that being pushed out, then we're also most likely going to see some of the competition returning to the market, waiting a little bit as well. There are a lot of people that are still waiting for rates to come down, and it's way more affordable with lower rates to purchase with the prices where they're at. But at the same time, once things switch, the waiting for the lower rate will then turn into, now we've got all this competition. And those tend to be the two reasons that buyers hold off. I don't want to compete with other buyers. And then the other objection is, well, rates. And so you're going to have one or the other. You're going to have the competition and higher prices, fewer contingencies, or you're going to have the higher rates. And so if I was a buyer right now or somebody thinking about buying, this is when I want to be buying. I want to be buying when maybe there's one or two or three buyers. Now, some listings, I'm hearing this here, some are getting 5, 10. I heard one that got even over 15 offers recently. So if you're buying in certain pockets of Seattle or around, you're going to be competing no matter what. But in general, in King and Snohomish County, you've got opportunities to buy with less competition still than you're going to see later in the year or as things pick up. So that's my thoughts here as somebody thinking about buying. I think for somebody thinking about selling a home, again, this is just preparation season. Get your house ready for the market. If you're not sure what to do, that's when you're going to reach out to your real estate agent. If you don't have somebody, I'd be happy to be a resource for you and talk through some of the strategies and the things that you're going to want to do to get your house ready to sell. This certainly isn't a market where you just throw your house on the market and it's going to get multiple offers and you don't need to do anything. I think there are specific things that you're going to want to do as a seller to prepare your house for sale. And I also think right now there are opportunities to do the buy and the sell a lot easier in this current market than it will be as things start picking up. So if you're somebody that's thinking about doing both of those things, you're also going to want to consider that this might be a better time to do that. Even though things might sell for a little more later in the year on your actual house that you have now, you may be able to start the purchase now, do the sale later, or start to do those things simultaneously. So thanks so much for tuning in here today to this week's Seattle Real Estate Market Watch. I'd be honored if you subscribe and follow along on a regular basis. And if I can bring any value to your situation, whether you're thinking about buying, selling, or even just have questions about the housing market here in the Seattle area, I'd love to be a resource for you.